Touch Dile everyone and welcome to class 11 biology. Today we are going to discuss from the first chapter of the textbook, that is the living world. So let us first look at the instructional objective of this class. So at the end of this lesson, students will be able to first list out the characteristics of living. Second, compare the definitive and non-definitive characteristics in living. Third, reason out why growth and reproduction are non-definitive characteristics of living. Okay, so when you look around, you find diversity of living organisms in various forms and structures and habitat. We also find a number of non-living things around us. So how do we differentiate between this living and non-living? Can you differentiate between them? Yes. We can differentiate between this living and non-living by looking at certain characteristics. And there are certain characteristics which are present in living and which make them distinct from non-living, and we call them as a living. Okay, so from this we can tell what is living. Okay, so to understand what is living, we have to understand the characteristics, features present in living organisms. So let us look at some of the characteristics found in living. Growth, reproduction, response to stimuli, metabolism, cellular organization, evolution, and homeostasis. And you can add to extra characteristics which are found in living organisms. And these characteristics can be definitive or it can be non-definitive. The characteristics which do not have any exception, we call them as definitive characteristic. So here we are talking about living. So these characters, if they do not have any exception, then we call them as a definitive characteristic of a living. So these characteristics, let us analyze each one of them. Let us analyze each one of these characteristics of living. First, growth. So growth is defined as overall increase in mass and number. Okay, so it can be of cell, it can be tissue, or it can be of organism part. Okay, so growth is nothing but, it is the overall increase in mass and size. Okay, so if we talk about living organism, we know that growth takes place in all the living organism. Okay, whether it be unicellular organism or multicellular organism. And this growth takes place through cell division. So the cell division in unicellular leads to its growth as well as reproduction. So in unicellular organism, growth and reproduction are, they occur simultaneously. Now let us take one example of growth here. So here you can see the growth of a plant from seed to the seedlings here. Okay, so there is increase in size, increase in its mass, and increase in its body part. Okay, so this is growth. We also observe the growth in non-living things too. Okay, let's say mountain. Mountain increases its size by the accumulation of dust and dirt and the rocks on it. Okay, likewise, there is an increase in the size of icicles. Okay, so there is an increase in the size. That means growth also takes place in non-living. So what is the difference between the growth in the living and non-living? In the case of living, the growth is internal growth. And in the case of non-living, the growth is external growth. So growth takes place in both living and non-living. Therefore, we cannot say that if there is a growth, we cannot say that thing is living. So that means growth becomes a non-defining property of living. Growth can take place in both living as well as non-living. That is why they are non-defining property or non-defining characteristics of living. Second, reproduction. Reproduction is production of new individual or progeny. This reproduction is important for an individuals, not individuals, the reproduction is important for a species to continue its generation. Reproduction is not necessary for one's survival. Okay, this reproduction can take place either through asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction involves only one parent. And there are different modes of asexual reproduction. Let us look at some of them. Asexual reproduction takes place by budding. So the example given here is that of Hydra. Okay, Hydra is an aquatic organism. So here there is an outgrowth here. And this outgrowth grows in size, and later on it detaches from the parent body and grows as an individual organism. So thereby increasing number. Okay, so here the mode of reproduction here you see is budding. And the second example is that of a starfish or sea star. So as you can see that it has 5 arms, and if one of the arm detached from the parent body, each part, the arm and the main body, regenerates its lost part and grows into an individual organism. Here again you can see this increase in number or production of new progeny, and such a type of or such a mode of reproduction occurs by fragmentation. Third, fission. Here the example is Paramecium. It is a aquatic freshwater organism, Paramecium, and this Paramecium splits into 2. Okay, that is called as fission. Okay, and then the last one here you can see is spore formation. This is very familiar to you. Okay, there's a spore formation. There's a growth of fungi on your bread mold and other food items. So these fungi, they produce asexual spores. Okay, and these spores, when they fall on a suitable media and the environment is suitable, again they germinate and grow into an individual fungi. So these are the different ways by which asexual reproduction takes place. And here there is involvement of only one parent, and these progenies produced from the parent are identical to the parent. There is no genetic variation. Okay, so this is how reproduction takes place by asexual means. In contrary to this, we have sexual reproduction, where there is involvement of both the parents. The gamete of both the parents fuse to form a zygote, and this zygote in turn grows into an individual. And that progeny is similar to its parents. The progeny is similar to its parents, but not identical to the parents because of recombination. Okay, so you see that reproduction can take place through asexual means as well as sexual means. So reproduction becomes an important characteristic found in living organism. Again, you must be aware that there are some examples of organisms where they do not reproduce. They do not produce the offspring. So such examples, let us see. Okay, mule. It is a cross between donkey and horse. These mule are sterile organisms. They do not reproduce. And second example is infertile human couples. So you must have seen in society where a couple are not able to produce the progeny. And the third one is sterile worker bee. So in the community, in the society of these bees, where they have a group of female bees called as worker bees, and these are sterile. They do not reproduce. Okay, so taking all these things into consideration, we see that reproduction is important characteristics of living organism, but all living organisms need not undergo reproduction. They may not undergo reproduction. So that means this reproduction becomes a non-defining characteristic of living. So here, reproduction is not inclusive defining property of life. Okay, now third one, respond to stimuli. All organisms, we can sense our environment and respond accordingly. So that is response to stimuli. So stimuli can be in any form. It can be in the form of heat or temperature, heat or we can say light, chemical, or anything. Okay, so let us look at some examples here. So you might have seen this is Pashminot plant, Mimosa pudica, and this, if you touch here, the leaf will fold. So the plant responds to the stimuli, that is our touch. So the folding of a leaf because of human touch here, okay, that is the response to stimuli. Likewise, this one most of us have already experienced. So whenever we touch any hot substance, we tend to remove our hand away from them. That is again respond to stimuli. Third one, the plant placed here, the leaves and the branches, it tend to move towards the window because towards the window, okay, they get more sunshine. So the plant moves towards the sunlight, and such a response to stimuli is called as phototrophism. Okay, so this stimuli is the sunlight. So they move towards the sunlight. That is phototrophism. So all living organisms are aware of their environment. They are conscious of the environment. So that is why we respond to the stimuli. Okay, so this response to stimuli becomes a definitive property of all living. Next, metabolism. So we know that all living organisms, okay, we are all made up of chemicals, and these chemicals, okay, they are not stable. They keep on undergoing reaction. So there are various types of chemical reaction taking place, and this sum total of all the chemical reaction occurring in our body is called as metabolism. Okay, for example, okay, so to get energy, what we do? We take food, and that food must be digested first, and then from the digested food we obtain energy by undergoing cellular respiration. So the glucose in the cell is broken down to release energy. So here you can see the breakdown of this complex molecule into a simpler molecule, thereby releasing energy. Such a type of reaction, we call it as catabolism. Okay, likewise, if you have, let us say, excess amount of glucose in our body, so these glucose, again, they combine together, okay, by undergoing certain reaction, okay, with the help of energy, they synthesize a complex molecule, let us say fat. So again here we can see the buildup of a complex molecule from a simpler substance, and that is called as anabolism. So in all the living organism, okay, these two type of reaction takes place, anabolism and catabolism. So the sum total of these two reaction, we call it as metabolism. And metabolism is important to, okay, for the survival of an individual, survival of all the living organism. So that means metabolism becomes a defining property of a living. Next, cellular organization. So cell is the fundamental structural and functional unit of all living organism, and these cells aggregate together, they function together to form a tissue. And the property of tissue you find is not found in the individual cell. So the property of a tissue is all because of the interaction of the individual cell. Likewise, the higher level of organization. So in all the organism, whether it be plant or animal, okay, it is made up of a basic unit called as cell. Okay, so non-living things do not have cell. So this cellular organization is a definitive property of living. Next, evolution. So we are all, okay, all the organisms, we are all linked to one another by sharing of common genetic material. Okay, in the past, in the present, and in future also. But the sharing of the genetic material is not 100%. It varies to some degree. So that is why, again, all the individual of a species, or all the individuals, or you can say all the organism on the earth, okay, they vary. So here, let us just look at the species of bird, Darwin finches. So these are all birds, and they share a common genetic material. But again, if you observe carefully, you find a variation. Okay, so here the distinct variation you can find is the structure of the beak here, structure of the beak, and of course the body size. Okay, so these are different because of the, okay, varying degree of, okay, genetic material. Even though they share a major genetic material, but there is a variation, and that variation is in such a way that they're able to adapt to the given environment. So here it is about their let's say food habit. Okay, so this evolution again is a defining property of living. Next, homeostasis. All living organisms actively maintain their complex structure and their constant internal structure through a process called homeostasis. So all living organisms, they try to balance the internal structure, internal metabolism. Okay, so this balance is very important here. Okay, so let us just take a simple example from human. So during a hot season, when the weather is very hot, what happens is our body temperature tend to rise. So as to balance it, what we do usually, we sweat, and this sweating provides us a cooling effect. And this cooling effect brings down the body temperature. So this is how they regulate temperature in the body, temperature of the body. So that is a thermoregulation. Okay, so likewise, all the organisms, they try to maintain the balance of the internal structure, that is homeostasis, which is again a very important feature or important characteristics of living. Okay, so till now we discussed about 7 characteristics of living, and you may add other characters. So from all these characters, what we have found is that some of the characters are definitive, while some are non-definitive. Okay, and we also know that definitive characteristics are those characteristics which do not have any exceptions, and non-definitive characters are those characteristics which have exception. Okay, so from these characteristics, we can define a living organism as living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to external stimuli. Okay, so living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, self-regulating interactive system which is capable of responding to external stimuli. Okay, so we can define living organism with the help of certain characteristics. Okay, so these characteristics can be definitive as well as non-definitive, and we have analyzed each of the characteristics, and then we can place those characteristics under definitive characteristic and non-definitive characteristic. So from here we have come to conclusion that growth and reproduction are non-definitive characteristics of living. Why growth is not a definitive characteristics? Because growth not only takes place in living organism, it also takes place in non-living. Likewise, reproduction. All living organisms might not undergo reproduction. There are some sterile organisms. Okay, so that's all for today's class. Okay, thank you.